Hey, this is Steve in Dallas, Texas. It's Saturday morning, my friend, and you are listening to Light Talk.
Well, good morning. This is Stan coming to you from Gainesville in Florida, and today we're going to discuss the Tony Awards, white versus color, facade lighting, the Fixture Chain-Gang, and how to get better, all on Light Talk.
And this is Ellen coming to you from the beautiful tropical island of St. Bart's. And if you don't already know, you are listening to Light Talk, and we are the Lumen Brothers and sister. Welcome to episode 325. And Steve has our first question.
All right, so it's from William in Minnesota. And William writes, how do you decide if your show is white light or heavy color? Well, William, a lot of times I have to say the director will help me make that decision once we start talking about the show. But from my own bias, over the years, I have become more and more in love with warm white light, particularly if I'm doing a show with less than 100 fixtures in it. I just find the white light is so much more flexible. You know, I can turn on a red light, but the red light's always a red light, and it's a one-shot deal. But with a flexible lighting rig and white light, I have all kinds of opportunity to work. You know, sometimes I have to be a little careful in my white light world because it can be harsh on skin tones. So occasionally in the front of house, I will lean toward a pale color out there to pull out skin tones. If I'm going to layer color into it, maybe something from the box positions, but mostly it would be from a side position or a back position, and I do something saturate there. I do find that if I use heavy color shows, I still like to have something white cutting across everything to pick out the performer on stage and to punctuate the moment. I mean, even in rock and roll, even those heavy color shows, you'll see that white follow spot cutting through everything. So I'm a bit of a sucker for white light, and I think that's probably just, I'm aging like a banana. I'm getting better, and I started out heavy color, and now I've moved toward white light in my dotage.
I was just going to say, doesn't it also depend a little on the emotional arc of the show and the storytelling? Like if you were lighting something, maybe the heiress in a townhouse on Washington Square wouldn't be so much heavy color as obviously Here Lies Love or Moulin Rouge.
Well, you make a good point because the emotional impact of the show and the style of the show, sometimes that does dictate color. I agree with the examples you've just given, but sometimes that speaks to why you want to add color in a show also.
I think I agree with both of you, and all I could really add is a couple of things. I think when you use color with a capital C, and to Ellen's example, it's to make a point, to underscore, underpin an emotion. You really, when you use color, you really want to have it speak clearly what it wants to do. And I think I'm like Steve. You know, I think when Steve says white light, he doesn't mean a one-trick pony white light. When Steve says white light is flexible, he means this range of spectrum of white across a wide range of kelvins or SPDs. And I think one of the great inventions now, you can get a wide range of, quote, white from an incandescent lamp just by dimming it, as we all know, but you can really only go from warm to more warm, or you can go from warm to less warm as you run the dimmer. But I think one of the great inventions that the LED has given us is this, I think what they're calling now, they've settled on a term of tunable white, where you can just very smoothly, imagine like a 3-minute fade from 2800 Kelvin up to 10,000 Kelvin. That would just feel like you just went through a whole day of sunlight in all the various variations of white. So I think there's a lot you can do in that sort of, let's call it the spectrum of white, right, from one end to the other. That gives you so much amount of variability. And I think the eye is particularly sensitive to those shifts, but we don't necessarily notice them in the world because they happen so subtly. And then sometimes we do see rich color in the world too. And rich color, I think, is like a hammer. It's like when you're going to use a rich color, you better really have a reason for it. And then it can be quite spectacular, particularly, as Steve said, when contrasted against a subject that is in some natural sense of whiteness, if you will.
Right. And is white always the softest color? Like if you're going, like, would the white of a follow spot be brighter than some of the other colors on the stage if you're heavy color?
You mean brightness, Ellen,
Yeah,
or
brightness.
you say softness?
Brightness.
But typically, that's a hierarchy of brightness, and I mean, you can dim the follow spot regardless of what its color temperature is down in terms of intensity. And
you can also put the follow spot in a complementary color.
You could. Mm-hmm.
Which you rarely see, do you?
And now, of course, would follow spots have tunable, as we're getting LED follow spots, you've got this. I will say this. Okay, let me say this in terms of we're going off on a tangent a bit, but we've been using some automated lighting for follow spots. And what's really remarkably wonderful is that everybody has a different color flesh tone. And so you can tune that light to just make somebody's flesh look exactly as complementary and beautiful as you want or not, and then record that preset of that color for that actor. So now we're not just working with a follow spot with gels and trying to find the right gel for that actor in that costume, but we have this tunability that we've never had before, and that sort of gives another range of possibilities both in the white world or, as Steve said, in the tint world, to just dial in exactly what makes that person look terrific or maybe not terrific, depending upon what you're trying to express in that moment.
I think the thing about adding color to a show is that it is a surprise moment. It is a really important moment that color is coming in. And I think, when we're starting out as designers, we get a swatch book and we go, oh, there's lots of color. I'll use it all over the place. And sometimes that works, but a lot of times it just it kind of gets in the way of everything else happening on stage. It gets in the way of the costumes. It gets in the way of the set. And maybe it's a beautiful photograph, but that's a half second of the show. And maybe it's a beautiful photograph, but it doesn't take the play anywhere. So for me, when that color comes in, it has to really be there for a reason.
Yeah, I'm in agreement.
Yeah.
And I'm just thinking about as we're talking about that, time factor in color. I mean, imagine going from a natural white of some kind on someone or something, and then slowly taking it from that to color along with the context of the script or the mood changing. That's a really powerful tool that we used to do by crossfading, but by using the same fixture. Somebody's in white light and they're getting angry. And just slowly that light shifts its color, right, to sort of makes the audience, amplifies them shift to anger or to romance or to whatever, whether it's on a backdrop or on a person. It's a really remarkable, the use of time, color shifting across time. Particularly now with LEDs, I think it's even an easier thing to achieve or experiment with.
I think it's certainly an easier thing to experiment with. I got some pushback. On the Facebook site, I posted a paper cutter, and I said, "Hey, the clock is ticking on you." And I've had a lot of people email me and say, "No, color is going to, gel is going to be around for a long, long, long time."
Yeah, so's the horse and buggy. Sorry.
So I think the great Satan here is getting an LED and not understanding how to use it.
Yeah.
And it falls into not understanding the principles of lighting design, not understanding what you're trying to achieve. It's almost like you've got a color scroller in the air at your show and you've run out of things to do, so you just scan through 12 colors back and forth. So I do think there is there is room for color here, for gel and for crossfades and for white light for a long, long time to come. I was pricing some lights for a small theater here in Dallas, and we were trying to buy 16 lights, and when it's all said and done, we're looking at $20,000, $25,000. So I think Broadway is going to lead the way. Rock and roll is going to lead the way, but it's going to be a while until you can kind of hang up your Leco and just reach for that LED until prices come down. So I don't know. I don't know about bus and what you call it, horse and buggy. I think this horse and buggy is going to be with us for a while before everyone can afford it.
I'll take that bet.
Well, there seem to be thousands of Source 4s, the original ones in high schools.
I would say millions.
In high schools and universities that I'm not sure are going to be replaced all that soon.
Well, let me give an analogy. So the Inflation Reduction Act includes all this money. The auto industry is unarguably transitioning itself from the internal combustion engine to the electric car. That's happening. Now, the projections about how long will it take to convert the fleet 100%, from the reading I've done so far from experts who study that, it's 10 years. So it's 10 years in the developed world, right? Let's say the G8 countries, right, to convert where most of the carbon and most of the pollution is created from the auto fleet. So 10-year conversion. So I'll go with that, Steve. I'll say that you'll see that transition from the gel and the dimmer and the tungsten lamp to something else in 10 years.
I think it's all finance. I do believe that what you're saying, those statements are true. But I went and just looked at an electric car, and I was at Volvo, and Volvo said, "Yes, this is every man's car. It's the base price is only $50,000."
Yeah,
and I'm sitting there I'm thinking about that. It's if they consider that every man's car at $50,000,
they're off the mark. Yeah.
Well, that's in the whole industry.
Right. Here's what I'm going to tell you.
So going back to the lighting industry, the whole industry is struggling with this.
Yes.
Ellen's right. There are millions of incandescent fixtures out there and thousands of theaters that, man, they are trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
The Lord theaters of the world, not worried about them, not worried about Broadway, TV, film. Yeah, sure, they can do it. I'm just thinking about all the little theaters where so many people get their first jobs and their training once they get out of college. That transition is going to take more than 10 more years, I think.
Well, here's what I would say on both industries. In the car industry, you're right. Right now, the expense is high. As these incentives ramp up, I would say we're holding off on our next car about a year or two. So my prediction is within 24 months, you're going to see a wider range of electric vehicles and a wider range of price points. That's just one of the good things about capitalism. And then on the lighting side, we're trying to push that forward when we have a high school budget that can absorb. When we crunch the numbers in a renovation between putting in new dimmers and tungsten lights versus no dimmers and power distribution and a smaller complement, a smaller rig of automation, and we look and we see and the numbers are about the same, we persuade the owner, if they're persuadable, to go with the automation and the LED and not dimmers and gels. And when we weigh the factors of safety and rigging and all the other pieces that it takes to access a fixture, and at the same time, there's maintenance involved in the automation too. But if we start to do that in high schools, you'll start to see that trickle out.
Yeah, that's good for the ones that have a renovation budget.
Yeah, that's where most of my time is these days.
Right. I was just going to say about the electric cars which is irrelevant to this conversation, but there seems to be a big pushback against them now because of the earth-scorching ways they get the lithium for the batteries and the fact that you can't recycle them.
Well, they don't get recycled. They get retired to solar collection facilities out west where energy is stored from solar collection.
Well, I live on an island that doesn't have one of those, and people don't know what to do with them. They're just piling up.
But how do you get your electricity on your island?
They burn gillions and zillions of gallons of fossil fuel, and everybody just plugs their car into an electrical outlet.
So my question is, in an island that probably gets an extraordinary amount of electricity, why isn't your utility starting to convert to collect both wind and solar?
They should, but they don't want to.
Well, therein lies your right.
Right. But electric cars, anyway, that's a conversation for another day, but they're not a great solution.
All right, so moving on. So Stan has our next question.
Ron in Texas says, I am tasked with lighting the side of a building, 30 by 80. I understand I can treat it like a site, but is there a formula for figuring out about the foot candles I will need? So here's what I know, my little hat knowledge of facade lighting. One, there may or there may not be a code at the municipality where you're working. So that would be the first place to check. If there is a code for vertical illumination, which usually has to do with signage in the municipality, you will get a reading from there. That would be the first place to check. The second place to check would be with the Illuminating Engineers Society of North America. There are documents on facade lighting, and you can see what the recommendations are depending upon the environment. And there's some really nice stuff on people, depending upon where you're located and the type of thing you're doing. They'll have recommendations, and they will probably give you a range. And then if little old Stan was to throw a number at you, or a little bit of guidance, I might say, remember that vertical illumination needs a lot less energy than horizontal illumination if you just think about the geometry. So if you light something horizontal, the bounce light or the reflected light, which is what you see, goes where? Straight up, right? Depends on where the light source is. If it's overhead, you light it horizontally, it bounces straight up. You're coming in from a 45, it's angle of incident and angle of reflection, which I'm sure you understand, Ron. When you do the facade lighting, you're coming in and you're lighting this vertical element. People are looking at it almost perpendicular or at maybe a slight offset angle. It's bouncing back really nicely. So you don't need as much as you might think. In particular, if you're lighting it at night, you have to consider the ambient light conditions, other buildings in the vicinity, street lighting, other light that is impacting that surface. But as a rule of thumb, 5-foot candles is a lot of light in that environment. 5-foot candles is not a lot of light in the theater, but on a facade, 5 is a number to sort of start with. Also, it depends upon the material. Is it white marble? Is it Colorado, red rocks, sandstone? Is it beige? What's it made of? Is it metallic? So you need to know what the reflectivity of the materials are. There's a few things to get you started, and I'll let my colleagues add some more.
No idea.
Me either.
So, for me, what I do is I get with my manufacturer and I say, this is what I'm doing. Let's talk about products that can allow me to achieve that. And then if I'm lucky enough, we can test something in. But no, I do not have a formula on the top of my head on how to light it.
Also, if this is outside, the number of foot candles might be determined by the ambient light in the area. What is it competing with? How far away do they want it to be seen? I know Ann Militello ran into a problem with a hotel in Los Angeles one time where it was right by the freeway and they didn't want changing colors. They were afraid it was going to disturb drivers. So maybe where is this building?
All right. Ellen has our next question.
Jasmine, a lighting student in Pennsylvania, asks, why do you daisy chain fixtures together and what kind of cable do you use to do so?
Stan, you said you had some notes on this?
So, why do we do it? Well, we do it because we can, I guess, and we do it to save cable. So if you had to run a DMX line to every fixture, what we call a home run, you'd have much more footage, right? So all the fixtures have an in, a DMX in to run that fixture, and then an output or a pass-through where you can pick it up and then take that on to the next fixture. So you save cable, okay, in that regard. We use DMX, and there are different kinds of cable. Different kinds of shielding, different kinds of jackets, depending upon how much abuse it's going to take, different kinds of connectors. So we try to not make our own anymore. We try to buy manufactured DMX cable with good strain relief, good jackets, because they do take a lot of abuse. They get plugged and unplugged a lot. And we've been struggling with a situation with the DMX chain that keeps misbehaving. I think I talked about it on an earlier show. And we still have not figured it out. We still think now we're back to thinking there's one fixture that's putting junk on the network because there's it's DMX pass-through is not behaving, and it's not just affecting one chain of DMX, but affecting the entire network. But now we're even looking at, network switches, which what is the lifespan of a network switch? 5 years, 10 years, 15 years? All the entire control network runs through these, Cisco switches, right? And a lot of Ethernet cable running through those switches, and they're on all the time, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Do they get dusty? Do they get heated up? Do capacitors fry? Same thing with DMX pass-through boards in the fixtures. Don't know. So just rules of thumb, we daisy chain them to save on cable is the short answer.
Okay. Does it also save on universes of DMX? Is that what you're saying?
No. Because a fixture is going to eat up so many addresses. Depending upon the mode that you put the fixture in, it could be using 16, 30, 56 addresses, and you only got 512 per address, right? But no, the daisy chaining would not impact that, although I did learn something interesting from ETC recently. When we do these repertory light plots for these facilities that we work on, they made a suggestion, because when we use DMX over Ethernet, you have the capability of, I think, 66,000 addresses. That's a lot to eat up. And so we don't usually have to use separate universes anymore. So for example, on the first electric, we'll call it universe 1. And maybe there's 8 fixtures, and it's not going to use up all 512. But then on the second electric, we'll call it universe 2, and we'll start them at 2. They start over at 1 again. And so we now make each position, we give it its own quote universe, because it's all networked, and we just have so many. So it's not a matter of, I don't want to use up the addresses in this universe. What we do, and in particular, we're very careful that when you get to the last fixture in that position, if you don't have enough addresses, you don't want, and you're going to break into the next universe, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's something. So that's a consideration, if that makes
Yep.
sense.
Very good answer.
Well, guess what, folks? You're listening to Light Talk with the Lumen Brothers and Sisters, and this week, Light Talk is sponsored by.
Actually, we have a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s. Right about now, you have given up on your New Year's resolutions. You remember back in January, walk 10,000 steps a day, no more complaining at load in while you're asking to drive the forklift, and to stop saying, "When I was your age," to the other stagehands. All good goals, and all out of your reach. Time to set some realistic resolutions, certainly for the summer touring season. Let's go easy. Number 1, in 2023, I will not ask for a t-shirt until morning coffee. That's right. Keep the road crew guessing. Pace yourself. Wait until the LD has a relaxing donut in his or her hand before you say those 5 magic words. How about a t-shirt, man? Number 2, in 2023, I will ask which end of the feeder goes in the box first. Number 3, in 2023, I will do my best while loading the truck not to say 360 that box, or flip the box that says do not flip, or stack the box that says do not stack. This has been a public service announcement from No More 10 out of 12s.
And now back to your favorite show, Light Talk.
Well, the sound of those lovable hipster monkeys bouncing around the coffee shop means it's time for Let's Talk About. And today, let's talk about the Tony Awards. And if anyone cares about award shows anymore. But first, the nominees and winners. Best.
Oh, whoa, wait. I just want to put something in there.
Yeah.
I want to take a rolled up wet newspaper to the nose of NPR. I was looking at their story today, and it was entitled Major Winners. They left all the designers out.
Oh, goodness.
I mean, it was a post on the internet.
God.
And they didn't have time to list the winners of, I guess designers aren't major winners. But I do want to give a tip of the hat to Yahoo Financial Network that who would have thought they listed everything.
Good for them.
Thumbs up for Yahoo, thumbs down for NPR.
I mean, just all that would cost them with a couple of pixels.
Right.
Gee
It was NPR. It was NPR.
On the air or in print?
In print.
In print.
Yeah. Pixels are free.
Right.
I don't understand it, but I could understand it because you only have so much time on air to do things.
Right.
But come on.
Well,
As they say, come on,
man.
Come on, man, like Joe says.
Well, Live Design makes up for it because we only list the design winners.
And who are those winners?
Well, here we go. For best lighting for a play, the winner is Tim Lutkin for The Life of Pi. The other nominees were Neil Austin for Leopoldstadt, Natasha Chivers for Prima Facie, John Clark for A Doll's House, Bradley King for Fat Ham, Jen Shriver for Death of a Salesman, and Ben Stanton for A Christmas Carol. Best lighting design of a musical, the winner is Natasha Katz for Sweeney Todd, The Demon Barber of Fleet Street. The other nominees were Ken Billington for New York, New York, Lap Chuchi for Camelot, Heather Gilbert for Parade, Howard Hudson for And Juliet, and Natasha Katz for Some Like It Hot. So congratulations to all the nominees and the winners.
That's amazing that Natasha Katz did not take herself out.
Right.
I mean, she's nominated twice.
It's interesting. I thought she might, and that Ken Billington might win for New York, New York, which won for set design because they go so hand in glove.
Nice to see everybody doing so well.
Yes, and it's a wide range of people. You know, Ken, it's probably his 120th Broadway show, and there are some newcomers there too. So it's a great range of designers.
So what do you think about the base question there? Do we live in a world that needs award shows? I'm not saying a Tony is not important, and I'm not saying that at all. What I'm asking is, do we care anymore? Does the American public want to turn their television sets on and watch another award show?
Well, I'm not sure about the public, but I know that the designers who won them are certainly happy. It's peer recognition. It's good for the sale of the show, which means it's good for the residuals. The shows that win a lot of Tonys tend to tour. So the designer might get called back to, revise things for the tour. And the ratings were high.
The ratings were high. That was the most people tuned into this award show, I think, ever.
At the very least, it's a good attaboy or attagal. It's a pat on the back and saying you did good work, and like Ellen said, your peers recognize it. And, at the same time, so I think there's a value in that. And at the same time, one could argue the opposite, which is it's the arts, and should we really be competing with each other? I don't know.
Well, I'm not talking about competing or patting Ken Billington on the back. I'm saying, does Joe and Betty Sixpack from Ohio care?
No, they don't.
All right, so they're the ones that I'm saying, are they tired? Do they watch the Academy Awards? Do they watch the Golden Globes? Do they watch the MTV Awards? Who is this audience? I mean, it's a huge audience. Who do you think it was?
It's a good question. It used to be, for me, a must-watch thing. And ask me what I was doing last night.
Sleeping.
Playing ping pong.
I wasn't watching the Tonys. My wife was, though.
Well, yeah, but who are the 4.3 million viewers then?
Exactly.
Hardcore folks. Theater geeks.
I guess.
People who just love it. But it sells advertising.
I wonder how many were actually tied to the theater in some way.
I don't know.
That'd be interesting,
that
too.
Would be
it would be interesting.
Run the demographics on that.
And I think, Steve touched on this before, that the fact that they were streamed on Paramount Plus probably helped a little bit. And it was for 13%. CBS said that the The audience for the live stream grew 13% over last year.
Well, they have to be happy about that.
Yep.
I wonder if it had anything to do with the writer's strike. You know, the idea that some of the stuff that happens we have a lot of time for the MC to talk and a lot of talking and chatting going on. And I wonder if this was just more interesting because we didn't have that background noise going on.
Well, I'm assuming that you guys watched it. My wife told me that it was unscripted this year.
It was unscripted
Exactly.
because they were going to strike, and it wasn't going to happen unless they agreed to.
Extemporaneous conversation. How was that then? Were people charming and witty?
Yes, and they spoke from the heart.
Oh, that's sweet. That's nice. I like that.
So that's kind of exciting. And they were filming people running around backstage. They were trying to make it as exciting as they possibly could, and as exciting as an award show can be if you're not participating or you're not sitting in that auditorium watching it.
Yeah, I think originally there was going to be an introductory number written by Lin-Manuel Miranda, who supported the writer's strike, and they did not do it. So maybe next year. I was going to say, I don't know what happened with people who were, if there were any Writers Guild writers nominated for script, if they went or didn't go, but they did support it by not having a script.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see at the end of June where the writer's strike is, but I think we're already doomed to endless reality television shows. And I noticed that the latest Mission Impossible has stopped shooting because they don't have a finished script.
Right. Yeah, I think it's beginning to impact a lot of people. Another thing that was interesting, one of our co-hosts here, Zach Borove, who could not be with us today, wrote something interesting about last night. He said, back in 2007 or so, when I begged the Designers Union, USA 829, to create a category for projection designers, ultimately organizing my brothers and sisters to join, and even being lucky enough to sign the very first USA 829 projection design contract ever executed on Broadway. My goal was to create a path for my fellow designers and I to have access to health insurance, a pension, and other benefits and protections that would turn theatrical projection design from a job into an actual career. So it couldn't be more thrilling to see that 15 years later, we are not only thriving, but even winning the highest honor a Broadway projection designer can get. And what's happened is that the Tonys did not create a category, but they've added it to set design. And it's a shared award.
Do we have a sense of why the Tonys have been resistant to this?
I think they feel that the design categories are already pushed off the main stage, and adding another one would just make it worse.
Well, I'd be happy to get a projection award out in the alley.
Yeah.
I don't have to be on the main stage to get it. I don't know if that holds a lot of water, that they think the evening is too long to add another category in. It must be more complicated than that.
I do know that there are other people that would like to get Tonys as well. Hair and wig designers, makeup designers, casting agents. There's all kinds of people who are in the wings, as it were. So
I saw a petition to add stage managers into that.
So maybe they're afraid to just keep adding and adding and adding and adding.
Okay, maybe you're right. Maybe that's the complication.
Sound came and went already. It came and went and came back. So I think the sound designers were like, going to turn everything off and see how much they liked it. So it is complicated. And Broadway economics are shaky as it is. Even Andrew Lloyd Webber, who I think for the first time in how many years doesn't have a musical currently running on Broadway, has pointed out that, the unions want more money and the ticket prices can't go any higher, and how many shows break even, and it's complicated.
Has his new musical closed? I know it got snubbed.
Yes, closed.
It was not nominated for anything.
Closed. You mean Bad Cinderella? Yes, closed.
My good friend Steve has our last question of the day.
Carl in Los Angeles asks, how do I get better at lighting design?
Practice, practice, practice.
Ellen's got a point. I think it is sitting in the captain's chair month after month after month. It is doing a lot of work. And you're either going to get better or no one's going to hire you. But I think you've got to be in the hot seat designing shows. And I think you have to be working with good directors who really bring something to the project. I think, easy ways to get better at lighting design. So if you're like, undergraduate and you're asking this question, easy ways to get better: study photography, study art. Really go look at it. Don't just lip service it. Don't just say, well, I'll go to the museum today and walk around and have a hot dog. Go in and really sit down and look at stuff and analyze it and see where the light is coming from and look at the subtleties of it. So again, photography, artwork, it is going and seeing a lot of theater. And it is also going and curating that. It is going and seeing good designers' work. So maybe your favorite theater to go to is that little mom and pop theater, and you have friends there, but let's face it, the work's not that great. Maybe you need to be going to a better theater in Los Angeles where some heavy hitter designers are coming into work, and you start looking at their work and trying to figure out why they're doing what they're doing. Maybe it's actually going to a few talkbacks where designers are there and you're hearing what they have to say. Bill Eckhart at SMU, who founded the design program here, he used to say that young designers needed to work with really good master electricians. And then he would also flip that. He would say young master electricians need to work with really good designers. So I think it is about the people you are working with and learning from everyone around you. What do you guys think?
Well, I listening to your answer, Steve, and I thought it was absolutely fabulous. And I was thinking, what could I add? Photography, art. As you were talking about that, I was thinking, being in the room with people who are better than you.
I'm going to throw a Theron Musser thing in there. I was talking to Theron. We had a similar lineage in that we both worked at Jose Limon. And I was asking her late in life what makes a good designer. And she was very straightforward. She said, using your eyes. And, you think, well, that's a silly answer. But she said, I guarantee you, everyone has seen traffic lights. And they've all seen red lights, yellow lights, and green lights. But they don't know what they look like. They know they're red, green, and yellow. But if I gave them a swatch book, they could never match the colors. So I think it is just not taking anything for granted. What does the day look like? What does the world look like? That light, that wall that someone wants to light. What does that wall look like at different times of the day when the sun is striking it? If
you really look at that traffic light, that's a really interesting reflector in there and how does it work. But I also thought of this thing is really work with people who will push you. Don't try and recognize, okay, they're going to accept whatever I do. I'm in my comfort zone. Try and find people who are going to push you beyond your comfort zone in anything you do in life, I think.
The other thing I was going to say was to be really well-rounded. Like you said, keep looking at theater, but I always say look at everything else too. Look at art and look at art history and look at painting and sculpture and, be historically schooled. So if a director says, oh, please light this like Venice in the 18th century, you better know what Venice in the 18th century looks like or where to go find out what it looks like.
One of the things that is really well lit, and everyone's about to spit their coffee right now, is wrestling.
It is.
Right.
Go look at wrestling. The subtlety of that. And when I say subtlety, look at a wrestling match on television, and a really mark of that is there's no ring shadow on the wrestlers' bodies. There are no distracting shadow lines on them. That didn't happen by accident. That was a designer understanding what he or she had to do and where they had to put the lights to illuminate that thing, and that there was no shadows all over them, which seems like a simple thing when you think about it, but it's not so simple when you have this ring around everyone that's, projecting a shadow.
Well, the rocking sounds of the luminoids tells us that once again you've spent another morning listening to Light Talk. You can hear our show on just about every podcast site out there. Check out our website at lighttalk.org and be sure to follow us on Facebook and subscribe to our podcast. That way you will not miss a second of Light Talk insanity.
No guarantee is offered regarding the accuracy of any statements or opinions made on this podcast. However,
if you decide to get really tough and aggressive and try to litigate us, the Snoot Group, with the legal team of Sparks, Burnout, and Chase, will defend us whether you like it or not until our retirement funds are depleted.
Light Talk is written and produced by the Lumen Brothers and Sister, coming to you from Gainesville, St. Bart's, and the Republic of Texas.
And be sure to join us next week when we talk about more lighting shenanigans and serve you a casserole of nonsense.
Light Talk, broadcasting questionable lumen knowledge and humor around the world.
We will see you all again next Saturday morning. Bye-bye from Light Talk.
Toodles.
And David, I hope you're having a blast out there.